hiring to myself. Okay, Brett?
Thanks everyone for coming. Again, you've been wonderful with attendance and you've had really good questions. So in continuation of what I think were a whole bunch of great modules, we're doing personnel and HR as a startup. What I thought would be a great subject matter expert to come speak today is somebody who's walked the walk both in the business world before becoming a startup and has been very dynamic as a startup. I'm not going to steal her thunder with her background or what she's done because I think she's going to speak of that. But Karen Rzepecki has also been a very dedicated give back startup in our community, and she's one of the smartest startup owners, CEOs that I know, so I know she's going to be rich in feedback. So also don't hesitate to ask as many questions as you want because she's a great resource and a person who can give you deep knowledge in a bunch of areas. So with no additional ado, I'm going to pass it on to Karen Rzepecki to talk about her business and her concepts around personnel. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So I'm here to talk about management and personnel, and how do you talk about management and personnel and come away with something useful within an hour? It's pretty hard to summarize that topic in an hour. So, and in fact, I saw Joe's pitch last week, and I thought, wow, that's like a PhD dissertation in an hour and a half. So I'm going to let you off the hook. This is going to be an easy one. I looked back at my career and what I've done with my startups, and I summarized the 4 top derailers that I experienced personally, and others experienced too, regarding management personnel. And I thought I would just focus on those top 4 derailers. What gives me the experience to do this? You know, why should you trust what I have to say? I have about 30 years experience at GE. At the start of my career, went through their management training, really best in class training, all about management and personnel and leading people. I was a global P&L leader. Then I started my own company. My first company was Mason Jars Company. I make a product, recap Mason Jars. I make a consumer product, caps for Mason Jars. And from that experience, I wanted to create a marketplace because I sold on Amazon and other marketplaces, and I didn't like the direction it was going with all the knockoffs and the inability for small makers to protect their products. And so I decided to create my own marketplace. How hard can that be? It's kind of hard. So I created another company called Makerspace, and we are a software development, marketplace software development company. So we create marketplaces for people, niche companies or economic development regions, that sort of thing. So I have, through the years, hired hundreds of people, laid off thousands of people, and fired some people too. So I have like a ton of experience with that part, and also managing and promoting and allowing some really great careers for people as well. So I summarized the 4 things that I felt everybody does wrong, even when you know you shouldn't. So I knew not to do these things, and yet I did. And you'll find you're going to learn, and you're going to do a lot of things right, and you're going to do a lot of things wrong. But even when you do some things wrong once, you don't always learn that lesson. Sometimes you do it again. And I think the only time that comes into play is when it's with other people and relationships. And that's why when it comes to staffing, management and personnel, because the dynamics are so different between people, you actually can make the same mistake twice. And so these are the highlights of what are those things that are most likely going to go wrong so that you can figure out how to deal with it and how to prevent it. All personnel management and staffing always starts with your metrics. Your foundational metrics for what you want the company to accomplish is the key to the current staff you might have and your hiring your staff. And sometimes you get those metrics wrong, or maybe not exactly right. And here's an actual example. So I'm going to show you 4 key derailers. This first one, wrong metrics. And I'm going to show you an actual example. So we chose the metrics for our year. We always do a yearly kickoff. We have our goals, our objectives, our key metrics. People start with those key metrics, and then they have their secondary metrics that support that. This one year, we had metrics that were revenue, traffic, and conversion. Our key goal was to increase revenue. It's probably going to be a goal for all of you at some point, I would assume. These are great metrics. And in fact, the team did awesome. The results were high revenue growth, over 500% revenue growth. I mean, it was amazing. In fact, it was even positive ROI, return on investment. However, what I noticed in time was that your team will execute on their key metrics. The results you get are what you measure, right? That's always the same. So they were killing those metrics, but they were overlooking some low-hanging fruit. We were overlooking lifetime value. We were overlooking those repeat purchases and gaining revenue from that aspect because the traffic and conversion were equally important. It was a formula that we created at the beginning of the year, and they were executing on the formula, but we missed some low-hanging fruit. In the end of that year, I personally wasn't as happy as I should have been because I noticed we didn't actually execute on some things well that were more cost-effective. We could have had better net income. We could have done a better job. And that was on me because that was on my metrics that I created for them. So what do you do when you do that? Because everybody here, you're going to create your metrics, you're going to hold your team accountable. You're going to want to not change your metrics often. If you have the right metrics, you're not going to change them that year. If they're wrong, you'll have to, of course. But it's a huge dissatisfier for employees to work for a company or a manager who is constantly changing the way they measure. It's a really bad way to keep happy staff. So you'll have your top metrics to hold the team accountable. They'll have their secondary metrics that match up to it, but you'll always have to look at what the balancing metric is. You'll see as you move through the months, through the year, you're going to see what's missing. And that's why you want to keep your initial metrics to just a few. You're not going to have, it's not a good idea to have 20 metrics to hold people accountable for. It's too many. Keep it to the very, very few, because as you move through that year, you're going to see these opportunities that are being missed because everybody's focused. And you want them focused. You want them laser focused on their metrics. But you're going to see what other metric do I have to introduce to balance this off. And in this case, it would be maybe net income, it would be lifetime value, it would be repeat purchases, it would be how do you maximize that revenue with that low-hanging fruit versus advertising bringing in new people. So there's other ways, and there's ways to do it through having that balancing metric. Any questions?
And those online, just unmute yourselves and ask questions to Karen, should you have any, please.
Okay. And feel free to jump in and ask questions as I go. This isn't, I don't have like 48 slides. It's going to take all night with like 8 slides.
I love that you start with metrics because I'm very black and white like this when it comes to the business model, right? But I'm also very spatial in paying attention to what's going on at the moment. So I love that the example that you've given. You got to pay attention to changing metrics or gaps, if you will. There's an earlier presentation that talked a lot about marketing and clicks, and you have operated a business through the return investment, netting out profit, to now everything's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You constantly got to be promoting. How have you kept your eye on your metrics when, to me, clicking in marketing, clicks don't equal return on investment? How have you sifted through that when it comes to your metrics?
So we do have an ROI for all of them. And so there's a return on investment. And you have to be careful. When you have an in-house team, you can better specify your metrics. A lot of people are actually using consultants and contractors maybe for the social and some other things. And oftentimes, you've got to be careful how they report out to you, because they'll report out a return on marketing spend, right? So what was your return on that spend? So let's say you spent $100 on a social media ad, and it actually converted to $1,000 in sales, right? So they'll give you, the math on what that conversion looks like. But you as the leader, you have to know what was my cost of goods. What in my case is usually cost of goods. In your case, it could be time, it could be whatever. So what was the cost of that? You have to know what that real return on investment was, not just what the return was compared to the marketing spend. So that's the key. It's not easy to do. It's very difficult. But you have to get to that level to know if you were successful. And then you hold the team accountable to the specific, the real return on investment that you're looking for. And that's one aspect. The other aspect is simply getting, the word of mouth out there, getting the email signups, right? So that has value as well. You have to determine what is that value to you, and then appropriate the spend for that. You're not going to get it's not going to be an exact conversion. Your conversion is going to be an email. You're going to have them sign up for something, so your conversion on that's an email. What's that value to you? And then what are you going to do with that? So especially folks that are if you're building an app or some software or whatever, generating those emails is extremely important, right? They're not going to, who knows how long that timeline is to actually convert them, but getting that email is the most important thing. So the second thing that I've done wrong, and people will do wrong, is hiring the wrong role. And the example I gave here is a real life example for me, and it's a real life example for a lot of people I know, this specific one. We wanted a marketing manager. And in this region where we are, it's very difficult to get a good marketing manager. It's difficult. But I would have to say, I've talked to people that have experience nationally and internationally, and they said they have the same thing. We hired a marketing manager who had some experience of executing, not a lot of experience with strategy, but that's always the direction marketing specialists want to go. They want to be a specialist, they want to do some execution, and then they always want to jump to that strategy role. So some experience with that. In the end, this derailed because they were not strategic, could not really finish the task, couldn't execute either. They were in that between stage where they didn't want to execute, but they didn't have the skill for strategy. And it is incredible how often this role ends up like that for many friends that I have that have done the same thing, ended up with the same results. It's very difficult. So in the end, what we learned from that process is start with a specialist and grow from there. Start with that execution to get the job done, and then you can grow from there. And you might even have to teach. We've taught a lot of people how to do the role, how to be a specialist. And again, as they learn and grow, you might find somebody outside, but you might have to grow it in-house. That can happen. Again, going back to the metrics as well, we've had occasions, not necessarily this role, but others, where did the role we outline really match with the metrics of what we expect to accomplish that year? And there's been times where they did not match. It was more of a kind of a not a need to have, but boy, I would like this because I don't like doing that anymore. But in fact, it wasn't really the role that would get you to accomplish your metrics. So again, another sanity check, going back to that foundation. In this case, again, wrong role. That can happen, especially in startups. You have usually such a small team. It's really hard to define what's most important. I never had a partner. I think that helps. Does anybody here are they working with partners? You are? Yeah, Lucky. So you're not working with a partner? No. And you're not? You're not, okay. It's harder. In some ways, as long as you have a good partner, that's great. That's a whole nother story. So if you have a good partner, it's awesome because you can, and hopefully it's somebody that has complementary skills to you, not the same, but complementary. So you can divvy up the work. But when you're on your own, you don't have a partner, you really rely on identifying and developing some mentors because you're the one making all the decisions. You don't have anybody to bounce off these crazy things that happen. And it's super important to develop mentorships, connections with people that are going to give you honest feedback. And that's extremely hard to find. And that's one thing that's really helpful in choosing your roles. So the folks in partnerships, you guys can, throw ideas around and hopefully hash things out. When you're on your own, I think it's really important that you bounce off the ideas that you have once you're ready to hire, you've already hired, and bounce it off to other people that you trust that can give you good feedback.
In those cases where the role wasn't defined well to align with the metrics, did you reshape the role with the individual in it? Or did you go a different direction and find create the right role and fill it?
Yeah, so that kind of goes into the next one is wrong person. So there's a difference between wrong role and wrong person. If the person is a good cultural fit, then, and a fit for that other role, then they would move to that other role. Obviously, you have to have a role for the person, you know, and they have to have the abilities, and they have to be the cultural fit. So, generally speaking, when I have somebody on the team that is a cultural fit, there's a job for them. We figure it out. If they're not a fit with the culture, there's nothing that can fix it. So wrong person, the third area that you can derail is hiring the wrong person. How'd you hire the wrong person in the first place, right? How's that happen? And I gotta tell you, this happens to everybody, so. and it's super stressful to get out. So this is like the most important one, right? So you're interviewing, and they have some decent accomplishments, right? They look good on paper, and they can talk through it okay. They're good at the interview. They look good. In the end, you hire them, give them a chance. Your gut is probably telling you this isn't going to work out, but you want to give them the chance. And the person doesn't get up to speed. They're a poor fit. There's no results. There's excuses. And the reason you hired the wrong person in the first place is you were desperate to get someone. And so you overlook some things, thinking that it's going to be okay. You trust the interviewee, so it's one or all three of these. You trust the person you're interviewing. They tell you their stories and answer your questions, and you trust them, that what they're telling you is true. But know that interviewees lie. They lie. And you gotta know that up front. It's a fact.
It's funny that you talk about the hiring for the culture, because I remember when I was forming a team, I had a candidate that I loved. And he just had this coolness about him. He was a talented person. And I intentionally did not have my boss interview him because I knew she wouldn't like him. And he didn't work out because of the cultural fit.
Oh, okay.
He had the qualifications and the skill set, but they were oil and vinegar.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that, because the third reason that you hire a person that you probably shouldn't is that they're likable. So it's one or all three of these reasons, and likability is not a reason to hire someone. And you overlook a lot when you have somebody that you're interviewing that you have a rapport with and they're likable. And they may or may not be a cultural fit, but likability goes a long way and hides a lot of stuff. And so that's how they get in, but it doesn't work out. One of the things that I do during the interview process, and first of all, you need to have a cross-functional team. I always have somebody else do the screening. I hate screening. So I always have somebody do the screening, right? That's the phone call. That's the basics to get them to the next level. And then it's good to have cross-functional people figure out who your go-to people are to help you interview. And again, ideally, they're folks that will give you honest feedback. And then I do a final sanity check. So I always, even when I had nobody on my team, when I first started, again, I created those mentors, created my, unofficial board of advisors, and got them roped into helping me set up my staff and do the interviews and stuff. And one of the things that I do is I do a sanity check on somebody that seems to be highly accomplished and right for the role. And I just call it my 3 squirrels test. So this is somebody who has a lot of accomplishments. But I want to know, do they have accomplishments because they're ambitious? Or are they lucky? Or are they distracted? And if they're highly accomplished because they're ambitious, it's going to show through the interviewing process and the questions you ask. It's going to show that they're organized and disciplined. It's going to show that they're curious. They're going to come to the interview, they already did their homework on your company or you, and they're going to naturally have some questions. Not the kind where you know that they got a piece of paper or their tablet out and forced themselves to come up with questions. Like just naturally, they're a curious person and just naturally have questions. That's an example. And then finally, you're going to sense they have self-awareness. Means that they know what they do well and they know what they don't do well. And that's okay. And there's a little bit of humility. On the other hand, when I try to eke out, are they lucky? Because people can be lucky. They can have results and they can be lucky. They could be lucky to be on the right team. There's lots of reasons to be lucky. They say even a blind squirrel can find a nut sometimes. What I'm looking for here is overconfidence, overestimating their abilities, and are they fuzzy on the steps it took to get to a success? Because if the accomplishment was theirs, they know it inside and out. They know how they got it. They know every step of the way. And you're not going to be fuzzy on that. Do you ever have an interview with somebody and they talk and they say a lot, but then you're thinking, I have no idea what they're saying? That's this person. Because they could have accomplishments, but they might be just a BSer. They might be just showcasing the accomplishment of a team that they were on or something else that just happened.
And then, two, for the fuzzy on step success, it's painful sometimes in an interview where you're looking at their resume and they were on a team and they did this research or they did that. And so you ask them about it and there's crickets. And it's very uncomfortable, and that's like a huge red flag in your face, like, yeah, I don't think so. You can't answer a question that you're on a team, and you can't talk about the research that you did. It's pretty obvious that you didn't do it, and it's painful.
It happens a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It really does. It does come back to, we'll interview a lot of people that they overestimate their abilities. It's up to you to figure that out. They're not going to. They think they can do everything. It's up to you to find out what they really can do. And hopefully, before you hire them.
What are a couple of good questions to Because I could definitely put pictures to names, and even if had that gut feel, say, that's terrible. But I don't know how to pull that out, other than my gut.
Yeah, so it's a lot of digging. It's like when you're talking, you always ask them about some accomplishments, and you look through their resume and try to eke out a few questions based on their experience. And then dig. Even if, like Kathy says, it's uncomfortable, just keep digging. And what you're looking for is that enthusiasm and that specificity to detail that you know they got it. And if they're not showing that enthusiasm, and if they're talking and saying things that they're just talking,
Using big words to make themselves sound intelligent.
a lot of buzzwords, a lot of things that doesn't make sense, not sequential. Like people that actually work on a project like you guys, when you accomplish something, you know how to start it, you know how the idea formed, you know what your steps were. Just like that. Actually, what comes to mind is, I don't know if this is an old movie. Did you guys ever see the old movie Working Girl?
Oh, yeah.
It's a good one. So it's an old movie, but it's Sigourney Weaver and Melanie Griffith, and Sigourney Weaver steals an idea from Melanie Griffith and pitches to this businessman a merger opportunity. And so later on, the businessman bumps up to Melanie Griffith, and she tells him exactly how she got the idea. She actually had the newspaper article that actually sprung the idea, that did this and this. She explained the whole thing to him on how it was her idea. And then later he asked Sigourney Weaver, you know, well, how did you come up with the idea for this merger? And she's like, well, you know, she had no answer. She talked a lot, but it didn't feel right. It's the exact same thing you get when you're interviewing somebody. You know when they're authentic.
I think that focus on steps and describing the process in detail, I think would be very helpful to cut through some of the noise.
Yes. And it's a little tedious, but it's also exciting when you have somebody that did accomplish something and they're excited to tell you how they did it. Right? The final one is distracted. You'll have folks that have a lot of accomplishments because basically they were able to do a really good job at putting out fires. So they were great at urgent tasks. Things that came up on a daily basis that were a problem, they would attack them. And so I call that adrenaline junkies. And the reason I say that is because I was one at one time. And that's how I used to work at GE. Had lots of different roles. But at one point in my career, I'm a problem solver. And so people came to me to solve problems a lot. Well, then I got into this role that's all I did. And got great results. Had a lot of accomplishments. People loved me. And then I moved on to another role. It was just regular P&L leadership role. And a lot of day-to-day stuff, a lot of building rapport, building staff, growing a business and company, which is different than daily firefighting. And it was really hard for me to not do that daily firefighting versus sitting down, being strategic, taking the long view, working the plan. It's a totally different skill set. And it's very, very hard to break. And it's not necessarily a person you want on your team, that daily firefighting. If you do, that's great. But if you're looking for the long game, it's very, very hard for that person to focus. And I have had people like that. And again, I can recognize it because I've been there. I know what it looks like. But they're not able to focus. They're not able to get their project done. And you'll, again, they have the accomplishments. You're hiring them because they did do a lot. They're great, but they're great at firefighting. And if that's the role you're hiring them for, they'll be good at it. But if it's not the role you're hiring them for, it's going to be a big disappointment. It's not going to be a good fit. So the final thing I want to say on that is, again, have a cross-functional team to help interview. Super, super important. No matter really who you're hiring, it's great to get that feedback from multiple sources. Because ideally you want to hire for the long term, right? Nobody wants to have churn. It's such a waste of time. If you can belong to some organizations, like I belong to Manufacturer Business Association, they have HR support and resources. And I'm affiliated with Ben Franklin. They have an HR person on staff. So figure out in all the resources that we have in Erie, who also has some HR resources that are going to be helpful during this process. So finally, the one thing that people do wrong until it burns them so much that they don't, and that is keeping a person too long. So let's say you hired that person that was an adrenaline junkie, right? They're awesome, but man, they just will not focus to get your project done. They're just always skipping on to something new and different, and they're not getting their job done. What do you do? So if you have a person that is not performing to the level that you expect, and they've been there longer than 90 days, then that's when you have to realize you have to take action. Reasons why it derails, probably didn't have a performance review with them. That's one reason that people derail. They could join your team, not really know what they're supposed to be doing, even though you think they should know what they should be doing. Sometimes that happens. Maybe they're working on some sort of a role that doesn't have concrete deliverables. It's hard to measure, or it's hard to figure out why they aren't being successful. And sometimes there's roles like that. It's somewhat ambiguous. Sometimes that can happen. Or you do have measurements and they have excuses, and sometimes those excuses sound legit. But a lot of times, the reason that you keep a person too long is the same reason that you hired them in the first place. So maybe you have somebody on the team that isn't working out. But if you get rid of them, who's going to do the job? You don't have anybody to do it. And you don't want to do it yourself. Because when you have a small team, it usually ends up in your lap. Or you trust the excuses. They're not getting stuff done, and they always have these excuses. And you know what? Some of them are legit. Or the third reason, just like a reason that could have been hired, is they're really likable. It's hard to let go people that are likable, even if they're not performing. It's tough. So how do you take action? The first thing is you have to complete the management side of a performance improvement plan. So I did give to Kathy.
I have to pass out after.
Okay, great. I have a form that is the basic. We've tweaked it for our own use, but we have the basic form that we use for performance management. And we have a very strict 90-day probationary period. And it's because we've experienced all 4 of these issues that I'm saying are the top derailers, top 4 derailers. We've experienced it, and you have to have a way out of it. So if you have a wrong person and you have to take action, even if you haven't had the management review with them, I force us to do it, even if we know we're going to fire or lay off the person, because it's like it's our penalty. Like, this didn't work out. We're not off the hook by just letting somebody go. We need to know why. We need to be clear, because if we're replacing that person, I have a feeling we weren't clear about that role, and maybe we missed something. Actually, just recently, we had a performance issue. We did not have a performance plan on that person. So I made the manager go back and do the performance review. So when I looked through it, it became clear the issue is on both sides. The person needed more mentorship and didn't get it. And so instead of going down a path of removing that person, I went down the path of having the manager work more closely and fix the problem. That can happen. So the first thing, then, do that management review, because you can see it's going to be clear when you see that form. It's long and arduous, not something you want to do, but you have to. It'll help you see, are they a cultural fit or not? And that was the deciding factor recently when I mentioned we had a performance problem. But when I did that, looked over that review, it became clear this person is a cultural fit. Very passionate. What's wrong? Something's wrong. So we were able to uncover that. So you'll be able to see, is this person a fit worth working with or not? And then the answer is no, this is not the right person for our company. Then what I've always done is I actually lay them off as not a fit. You can go down a path of going through this management review, giving them time, going back and forth, because you might be working with an HR person that wants you to document this. It's all about documentation. And then, in firing, I document, but I actually don't fire because they were not a right fit. Yet I give them that opportunity to say, I give them that out, because I feel like everybody has value in the right role and right place. Excuse me. And so it just wasn't the right role and right place for them with us. But it's important to know up front before you have that conversation if they're able to be successful or not. And when you go through that, excuse me, you'll also be able to have that conversation. My exits with people, I try to be very caring. I always want people to learn and go with a good feeling. So I actually will talk through the reasons in a kind way, and also talk through, if there were positives, what those were. So I use that information not just to keep them, but also when I have to let them go, and in order to do it in a constructive way. But what that's taught me anyway, a couple years ago, I had the wrong person, and everybody knows, you take your time to hire, but quick to fire, right? Take your time to hire the right person, but when you know they're wrong, you got to move on it. So everybody knows that in theory, but sometimes because of those reasons I talked about, they go too long. And I had somebody on for a year, and quite frankly, they were never, I knew within the first 90 days. But desperate to have somebody in the role was really the main reason for that one. Likeable too. Likeable goes a long way. Finally made the move, to reorganize and remove that person, and it's just not good for us or them. It's a year that was a waste for us, and it was a year that was a waste for them. So since then, we are extremely strict on our 90-day probationary period. Extremely strict. When we hire, we give out a 90-day plan, 30, 60, 90, and on the 30, 60, 90, each month, we give all the accomplishments that they have to do. So we lay out the training they need, the people they need to interface with, the tools they have to become familiar with, and what they need to accomplish in that month. And we review it with them every month. So at the end of the 30 days, we go through it. Did you meet the objectives? Then you do it at 60, and you do it at 90, and you make it really clear and actionable. And generally, midway, in that like 45-day mark, if they're going to work out or not. And the hardest part on that is going to be, again, if you have somebody likable, because now you have some good measurements, you have everything laid out, you're meeting with them, but you have to overcome any emotional connection that you might have. Especially small businesses, sometimes you hire a family. Thank God I never did. But but you back to life if I have to, sometimes. So yeah, you have to be, keep it objective and follow through on that plan, and really make sure everybody knows when they're coming in that you have a 90-day probationary period, and stick to it. Because when you make that action within the 90 days, it's so much easier. So much easier. It's still a waste. Don't get me wrong. When you're onboarding people and they don't work out, oh, what a time suck it is. It's not great. But if you can actually remove them within 90 days versus having them never come up to speed and just being a drain on the team, can't do that.
So I'm very familiar with the corporate performance review process. How different was that process for you in the early stages of your startup? Because it sounds like you've got a structured approach to it now, and what was different about it in the early days where maybe the roles were more ambiguous and
Yeah, so I had always been structured because of what I went through with GE. It was part of our processes anyway. But yeah, when we do a startup, it is definitely, I did not have a strict 90-day probationary period. You know, maybe it's also hubris to think, you know, I'm going to hire the right people, right? So, I don't need a probationary period. I'm hiring good people. Just be trying to. I've noticed a trend though in the past 10 years about that I never noticed before, and that is again people overestimating their abilities and they're being, you know, overly confident to the point of, you know, maybe lying. But I don't remember having that before, of having people that were so overconfident. It's a problem now. So, yeah, in the early days, I did not have that 90-day. But I did do the semi-annual, 6 months, and then the annual review.
Okay.
But I know a lot of people, a lot of startups don't do annual reviews. I did, I think, because I was just accustomed to it. I think it's a good opportunity for people to have a one-on-one discussion that's about them. It's not about the business and what are you doing and whatever. It's about them, their you know, goals and objectives and in life and how they're doing. I found that people like it in general.
So Karen, how would you, so we have a couple people that raise their hand that they have partners. And maybe that's all they have is just each other in the business. And they don't have any other employees. They're starting up and maybe it's been 6 months or a year. Do you recommend that they kind of do a performance eval on each other or get together, or not?
No.
Because partners is different?
Yeah, partners are different. You know, there's that level of trust. Hopefully there's self-awareness on both sides that you can. Partnerships are something I'm probably not adequately experienced to talk about because I don't have a partner. I think that's a whole nother can of worms. It can be really good or it can be really bad. I've seen both. I've always, at least in the past few years, I thought, boy, this second company that I created, it'd be so nice to have a partner for it. But there's downsides to partners too. Hopefully it's a close relationship that again has complementary skills. But no, I would not. When it's just yourself, on that note, when I started my company, one of the most important pieces of advice I got was don't quit your day job. Now it could have been because they had no confidence in my company, but it was good advice nonetheless. Don't quit the day job. I kept my day job, like GE, for 2 years while I was creating the company, built my product, and it took me 2 years. And it was my first product was highly successful. I got ROI within 3 months. That's including all the tooling and everything. So it was very successful, but again, it was new. I didn't know if it was a company. Is it just a product or is it a company? I didn't know. And so I kept my day job for 2 years. And so did it all myself. Hired somebody part-time to help with fulfillment, but I did everything. And worked. So it's hard, I know. But then when I quit and then started hiring, sometimes when you do it all, you think, and I did, I'd hire somebody to do something that I had been doing, and I'd show them how, and I would think, they'd come to me and ask some questions, and I'm like, figure it out. You know, I figured it out, why can't you figure that out? So it is kind of funny though, when it's all you, and then when you hire people, you'll definitely have high expectations for them. And I think you have to dial it back a little. So, but definitely I feel like it's not, do it yourself as long as you can. Don't hire to have to hire. Unless you got, you know, deep pockets, you know, you got an investor with lots of money and you can hire ahead of time. Awesome. I never did that. I was always self-funded. And so I'm very, very careful on who I hire. Plus, I'm very careful on who's on my team. Mm-hmm. To me, it's like, I feel like this is a privilege. We have a really full team. We have a lot of neat things we're doing. There's a lot of perks. So we're going to be really picky on who's allowed to join our team, and you should be that way too. You know, it's a special position, special role for them to be with you. And look at it that way, and that also helps define who you're going to hire. Because are they special enough to be part of your team?
Yeah, so something that I've faced recently, is more and more like, kind of post like about my business a little bit. Like I kind of have like friends that like say, oh man, I like love what you're doing. Like, how can I be a part of it? But then I'm realizing like, do they really care, or do they just want the satisfaction of, being a part of it? So like, it's hard for me to, like really say no, but like, what would you say is an appropriate way to have them help, but not really, legally be a part of the team?
Okay. Well, one thing that I do is I do hire interns. Okay. We have a really great structured program for interns. And so I don't know, what the ages are of these people, but if they're even within a couple of years of graduating college, that would be a route I would go. Because then they can be part of it, but yet it limits what you're doing. My son had a lot of people. He built a bike, smart bike, in a bike share program, and people that were in that space just loved it. And a lot of people came up to him and just wanted to be on the team. Mm-hmm. And that's probably how quickest way he grew, is he did figure out ways to have people part of the team. And when you're starting out, it's really hard for funding. Just be upfront about it, is whether you can or cannot pay them and figure something out. Anytime you have somebody passionate about something, why not, Why not see if that can work?
Right.
Yeah.
One question I have, you touched on a whole bunch of really neat things, but what's coming back to me, and it's like looking the thumb putting up in the air a little bit when it comes to hiring, right? That experience is still a bit of a free fall. And one of the things I'm seeing come out now are a whole bunch of personality tests, and are you matching the job with the personality? And some of that data is actually proven to be fairly effective. Do you feel those kind of tools are out there and are effective? Have you considered those?
Yeah, I've done a lot of those tools. The one I like that I actually use with my team is Know Your Strengths. So there's actually I forget who the author is, but the book is called Know Your Strengths. And there's a lot of different assessment tools you guys can take. There's so many different programs out there, and I've done them all through life. I don't know, GE or WebTech, if you've done them, but I've done them all. The one I like the best is Know Your Strengths, and I give that book to everybody after their 90 days. There's an argument that you would give it to them right away, but I think that's daunting for people. Ideally, supposedly, you would have it before you hire them. I don't know. I think people would game it. And I give it to people I give it to them for them. Know your strengths. That's for you. It's great for us to work with you as a team to know it, but this is for you. So know your strengths, and what the premise is different than it was in the past. In the past, you would be critiqued on all these characteristics, and then you would have to, let's say if you maybe weren't good at supervising other people, just come up with something, you would then be rated on how you can improve that, right? So in the old days, you had to be good at everything, and then what your weaknesses were, you had to work on to make them better. But know your strengths is different. It's saying, hey, these are your top 5 strengths, and they help rank your strengths, from 1 to, 34 or something. And it says, these are your top strengths. Work on these. Even though these are your top ones, this is what you're great at. This is what your natural abilities are. You can make those even better. And these things that you're not good at, don't get jobs where those are the most important aspects of the job, right? And if you have to have that in your job, be good enough that it's not a derailer. But everybody's personalities are different. Everybody's strengths and weaknesses are different. So if you try to make sure that your role, your job, plays to your strengths, you are going to be successful. And so that's the one that I give to people so that they can have self-awareness. Some people do not have the self-awareness yet, and this helps them with that. That's one of the most important ones. And
Sharon,
then
would you mind emailing us the name of the author and the book?
Pardon me?
Would you mind emailing me the book name and the author?
Yeah.
Because I can't find it online.
And then, okay. And then there's also they also have another follow-up for the leader side. So, so you give the know your strengths to an individual, and then there's one for the management to say, how do you apply that to your management team? And so what I do is give the book to the individual, and then I ask them, once they go through the thing and they get their results and all that, and then they share it with the team. And then I plot it out on a grid, and then I see how does that fit into the team, because then I can say, great, we have people that are really strong in relationship, but they're not strong in strategy. And I would say, awesome, because I'm really strong in strategy. Mm-hmm. So that's cool. Or they might have, I might be hiring somebody that's high in analytical and not high or missing in empathy or something. So I look through the cross section of what I have so that when I hire, I can help, it helps me on hiring decisions, especially for project management. So I have project managers that are very analytical, and then I have project managers that are very relationship oriented. So now I know when I'm going to give a project manager to a client, I'm going to give that relationship one to the client. The analytical one, I'm going to keep our own team that in more of that management position, because I know, and it's actually true, she's not so much of a people person, and where the relationship one is. So it helps you make those kinds of decisions. I once hired somebody for a sales role, and because that's what her experience was in, was sales. And then I gave her the strengths book. Strengths Finder is the name of the book, Strengths Finder.
Okay.
It's a not know your signs. So I gave her the book, she came back and she gave the results, and it's like, she like had 0 in relationship. She's a salesperson. She had 0 in relationship, 0 in empathy. All this kind of thing. I'm like, this is not going to bode well. So I'm like, I'm surprised you're in sales. She says, yeah, I don't really like sales. I don't really like sales. I like project management. Like, okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was she successful in her other?
No, she was not.
Interesting.
And actually, she's moved on. And again, I stay good with everybody. I didn't have a PM role for her. She moved on and got a PM project management role and is doing very well. And it's through that Strengths Finder that this all came out.
Wow.
Self-awareness.
I'm going to give a great term to it. To me, being a startup feels like eating a salad off a plate while you're sprinting. And all you do is want to give another fork to somebody and have them help you, right? But the bridge that you've given me today was the performance plan piece to at least get you through the first 90 days. So that there's a plan laid out. That's a project. I can add that to the pile of projects so that when I decide to hire, I can at least lay the work out for the first 90 days so it's not such a crazy sink or swim environment. Past the performance plan, you talked about the job description a little bit. What is the next thing that's after your performance plan? What do you do to keep that person on a trajectory of success?
Yeah, so we do a 6-month review. So again, then they have 3 months. I mean, we have meetings, it depends, you might have one-on-ones or whatever. So you do a 6-month and then we do an annual. But we're a startup. I don't want to say you have to be completely self-directed, but we don't hold people's hands. They gotta step up. So you make them as successful as you can. In that 90 days, you revisit with them, you make sure you meet with them enough that they're comfortable doing their job and asking questions and growing. But, well, actually, as an example, I meet with my GMs every week. I have one-on-ones with them because they need that mentorship. So you do need to understand what level of mentorship that person needs. And if they're a keeper, which hopefully they are, you figure out how to provide the level of mentorship that will help them grow. And everybody's different. As I mentioned, my GMs, I'm meeting with them weekly because I think they need it. And hopefully that'll change. But it's because that's a job growth for them. That's something that they've had many successes and they got a bigger role. And in that bigger role, they need that mentorship. So it depends how much mentorship that person needs. And it's as simple as asking questions and seeing how often they ask questions. And hopefully they do. When you have people that don't ask questions, that's kind of scary. That's one of your red flags. Somebody not asking you questions. But when you're working together through projects and whatever, you just naturally interact and interface anyway on business. So anyway, that's what we do to keep people successful. And then we also have of course, we have weekly meetings each team has a weekly meeting. And then we have monthly KPIs. So monthly is your come to Jesus day. So everybody's got to update the KPIs, and we come out and we report, and that's where you can definitely uncover anything.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Well, okay. So maybe this isn't for a different topic of conversation, but it's from a being a leader perspective. How do you, I've said for a long time, I would not make a good boss. Because to put it simply, if you don't do it my way, I'll be pissed. But being an entrepreneur, if you eventually want to grow your business, obviously financially is everyone's main goal. How do you move past that?
Yeah.
Like not being a micromanager, being able to compromise if I am a very particular person.
Yeah. So I think it's a matter of just being open and honest. As one example, I spent a lifetime managing people at GE. I was tired of it. I mean, that's why I became an entrepreneur and created a product. I love the creative process. I really didn't want to manage people. I still don't. I'm not interested in managing people. I like leading people. Being the visionary and helping with the strategy, but like administrative work and all of that, I don't like it. And I tell people, they come in and my team knows, I don't like managing people. I don't like administrative stuff. They know that. And they know it so well that they work together and they don't bother me. unless they need to. But we also meet. Again, we meet, we talk about projects and products and keep things on track. The monthly KPIs, super critical. But I'm first and foremost, I'm upfront with folks. They also know what when we do the strength finders, I also share mine with them. So they know what my strengths are and weaknesses. And so that's also good to know. But I have to say though, when you're an entrepreneur and starting, you kind of have to suck it up, and when you're the one, you're hiring people, you're going to do everything yourself until you hire people. And so that means you're going to have to manage people, and you just have to suck it up until you can get to that great point where you can hire a GM, and then they do that for you. But until then, you've got to do the best you can, because that's the role you guys have signed up for as an entrepreneur. So, but just try to be honest with them, and then empathetic as much as you can be.
You had a question, right?
Yeah. I don't want to, I'll talk and ask questions, I'll say. No, so I have an opportunity, I'm working with the EIT, and they require their students to take externships, which is great because I can't pay anybody right now, but I'm getting help. They get credit for it.
That's awesome.
But it also gives me a chance to practice an onboarding process. And I think that the 90-day and putting together structured goals, I'm definitely going to do that to test. What else do you think you would want to try on somebody that's low risk, just to work on a process?
I would definitely do an exit interview with them, because I'm assuming they have a start and finish time with you, right? So I would do an exit interview, and since they're leaving, it's a good time for you to get some feedback from them. Try to do it in a way that they can feel comfortable giving constructive feedback. But that can help tremendously. I would also find out where they want to go in life. You don't know. Maybe you might have some real gems that come through that you want to continue a relationship with or do something with. So I would try to foster that. But I would say also, because we do a lot of work with, we bring on a lot of interns, and one of our main goals is to help them grow. So I think that's like one of our key, that's always one of our key exit questions is, were we able to help you grow in ways that you didn't expect? And because you put a lot of time into it, having interns sounds great to have some free resources, but it's extremely time consuming. And I truly believe they get as much out of it as you do. So,
That's
but everybody we onboard and we give them a 30, 60, 90, they are very appreciative because everybody wants to know what they're supposed to be doing and how can they judge success. And so it's like a relief for them. When they have that 30, 60, 90, it's super important. They like it. And especially, again, comes back to that ambition. You got the right person that's ambitious. They like checking that box, right? This is laid out. Well, check. On to the next thing. That's what you like to see. Folks doing that.
Yeah, so my question was about, I find that some people don't necessarily have a skills gap that's necessarily leading to lack of output. Sometimes I find that it's maybe just a lack of confidence. So my question is, how do you incite confidence from individuals when you realize that they have maybe the necessary skills to contribute and add value, and it's not a byproduct of apathy, let's say?
Yeah. And I have somebody on the team like that. Interesting side note, a lot of women lack confidence. I don't know why. I don't see it as much in guys, but I'm sure it happens. But I see it a lot in women for some reason. So I have this person who I hired that was doing a good job, but not taking it to the next level. Doing a good job, but not taking it to the next level until we asked her to, or helped her do it, or bring it up. And it was all because of confidence. She lacked the confidence. And so what we did is build up her confidence on the stuff that she's doing, giving her lots of, hey, kudos. And she's a shy person that, there's some people that don't like to be recognized for, publicly or whatever for stuff they've done. They're kind of more reserved or shy. But so we would do it a little bit publicly, but a lot one-on-one on hey, that was really good. And then working on maybe something to take it to the next level, but always making that encouragement, finding out if that person is comfortable with the public attaboys, or if the private makes more sense, or a combo. And continually building that up. So we did this for this one person. I gotta tell you, she just knocked it out of the park. She was very, reserved and conservative in her marketing approach, and we just kept encouraging her. Actually, there was a time where I would meet with her. I had stand-ups three times a week. Just call them. I don't know if you guys ever do these, but if you have a specific issue you want to get through, we were on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 in the morning. Nobody likes getting up early in the morning, but she did. 15 minutes, stand up. It's meant to be super, super quick, literally standing up, right? You don't sit down and just have a stand-up call.
Agile or Scrum, is that what you're doing there?
We do use Agile for our projects. So I would do that I did that with her for like 6 weeks. Because again, she was conservative. I really wanted to push her to get to a certain level. So I met with her 15 minutes, 3 times a week for 6 weeks. And she just nailed it. She's doing an amazing job. it takes out a little bit of attention and the attaboys. And when they don't do something right, it's like, hey, that's cool, we're all learning. Depends how bad it was, but in her case, little things, people always do, you'll do little things, wrong in this life. So when you do that, don't ignore it. Make sure they know something's wrong, but you do it in a way that they're not gonna shrivel back and be afraid. Just make it known that, hey, I'm glad you took a chance. It didn't work out, but I'm glad to see you take the chance. Let's apply that to something else. What you learned from it, let's not do that again. But what can we learn?
Thank you.
And that was hard for me too, though, by the way, because I'm a person that has confidence. So when I see somebody, it took actually my GM telling me, she's really great, she has a confidence problem. And I'm like, I observed it and I'm like, yeah, you're right. But I naturally don't go there because I don't have a confidence problem. So it's not the first thing I think about. So the fact that you recognize that, it's a good thing.
You had made a point about that earlier about not expecting you from others. Like when you had delegated to somebody else to fulfill orders, you're like, well, why can't you do that,
Yeah.
That's important not to, expect others to do something that you would do naturally.
Right. It's hard. You figure you can figure things out. Why can't they? But it just doesn't work that way.
Letitia or Ken, do you have any questions? I know Brad has a question, but I wanted to give Letitia or Ken an opportunity to ask questions.
No, actually, I'm fine. I'm listening.
All right, thank you.
Can I flip the question on you to your point about confidence? So we have a couple entrepreneurs that have been part of this boot camp, and fear always comes into it at some point. And to get the confidence to overcome what I call a fear threshold, let's just say there's 10 in your trajectory to get from point A to point B, and B being market, right? To me, I can speak personally, there's always, out of 10, there's probably 2 or 3 thresholds that were very difficult. There was a fear element I had to process a lot. Sounds like you kind of bowl through those as they come. What is your coping mechanism to not let the fear set in, as you said?
I do meditate. So I'm, I'm big into meditation, yoga, hiking, and I think that's probably the only thing that it works for me. It's the other book that I give to people when they onboard. It's the Strength Finder, and then I also give them Deepak Chopra's the 7 Keys to Success for them, and then we talk about meditation, so that helps.
I love Deepak, that's what
Oh, do you?
Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah, so because, everybody's gonna have those moments when it's a, oh my God, what did I do? Right? Everybody's gonna have those. And hopefully limiting those is important because it can be, I'm part of a group of entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, they're across the world. And just recently, all this stuff that's happening in the world, of course, in the US specifically, is very upsetting. And so they're trying to grow their business. And on top of it, some of them homeschooling, some of them dealing with, mental health issues, physical issues. We're dealing with a lot right now that's overwhelming. And so it makes it harder than ever, I think, for people because purely because of the time we're in right now. And you've got to have some mental health breaks and figure out what that thing is for you. Like I like to hike. That's super important for me. And ski if we have snow, but you got to figure out what that thing is because otherwise you won't sleep at night. If you don't sleep at night, you are not good to anybody. And so what's going to help you get to sleep, and hopefully it's not an Ambien or something, but because you owe that to your team too, if you have a team, but it's a vicious cycle. That fear keeps you from sleeping. You don't get any sleep, you can't really perform well, and it just keeps, snowballing. So you've got to find whatever that solution is for you. Everybody's going to be different. And to make sure that you get that balanced sleep. And that when you have that, oh my God moment, that you can, calm yourself down. And at night, what I do, there's also things you can do to help you sleep, and there's mantras or things like that. But one thing that helps me go to sleep is like, hey, I can't do anything about it now anyway. It's like whatever time, 11 o'clock. I try to go to bed early, 11 o'clock, and if something's like really gnawing at you, and we're entrepreneurs, there's going to be stuff happening. My main thing is, I can't solve it tonight. I gotta let it go, because this being able to sleep and not worry is going to help me be successful. Whereas that worry doesn't solve anything, just makes things worse. It's tough. Everybody's got those moments, and it's outlasting it. I read a lot about entrepreneurs, and quite frankly, I think this one comment's really true. It's really just outlasting failure. That's all it is. In my case, I'm starting to outlast my competition, so I feel really good about that. Yeah.
Any other questions before we close out? Letitia or Ken? And I would like to get a group shot, so Letitia and Ken, if you can stay on, we'll put you back up on the big screen and kind of take a group shot close to the front real quick while everyone holds their breath. But I just want to say thank you very much to Kira Rzepecki for taking time out of her busy day to actually talk to us about that. I learned a whole bunch of stuff. I wish I had a business, honest to goodness, I really do. Besides taking care of everyone, but I just think it was fabulous, and thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, Karen. Thank you. All right, so I am going to take all of you guys. Let's stop sharing. Don't want to leave yet. All right, and then I'm going to pin. Oh, look, it's right there. Her.
Just change your mask up.
All right. All right, so everybody make sure you are with Letitia and Ken. I don't know if it's fair that they don't have their masks on. I thought it was funny. Thank you.
Hey there, everybody.
All right.
Wrong. Like,
No, don't stop. We need Karen kind of in the middle, because you're the speaker.
okay.
Just enough room right in the middle.
There we go. All right.
We're smiling.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. And we will see you next week. I'm going to email you the presentation, the performance appraisal, that template that Karen gave us, as well as another article that I found. So look for that tomorrow, and see you guys next week. Thank you so much. And then notice, thank you very much, that I actually am asking for dinner choices in advance.
Kathy, are the doors that I came in, are they open? Like, can I go out of them?
Oh yeah, you can totally go out.
Thank you, I appreciate it.